Hello, 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 everybody. After a slightly longer delay than we were anticipating, but still a relatively brief one, we are back with game number 2 here between Chicago and Cincinnati. Chicago has swapped sides like the turncoats they are, going over to the red team, where Cincinnati is going to be taking up the mantle of blue. And I will not be swapping sides. I will be continuing my play-by-play goodness, but I will continue to be joined by the goodness of Rapid Casting, who hopefully is going to get a full pick and banyan with me today. How you doing, buddy?
Well, hopefully if I can be here, I can whip these kids into shape and we won't have as many shenanigans in our picks and bans as we did last time around. But to be fair, I actually loved seeing a bunch of new champions in there. That's one of the reasons I love casting CSL, is because not only do you get to watch, the pinnacle of collegiate competition when it comes to League of Legends, but you also get to watch a league in which it matters a lot more, not just which champions you're good with, but how good you are with them. Because at this level, this is not, like the SSS class tier of world's competition. So there's more room for these players who are just god mode on whatever champion it is, and you can see a lot of respect to that, banning out Figor's Wukong, as well as taking away the Swain, which was a really cool mid lane pick in game 1.
And first picking the Malphite here for Figor means it's not going to be on Ghibli Studios. They take away that guaranteed engage, but what they leave up is Red the Swift's Varus, which was huge last game. I'd be really surprised if Chicago didn't pick that away, unless they're thinking of playing pretty much the same sort of comp that they did last time, in which case Varus wouldn't fit all that well. But just getting it out of Swift's hands might be worth it, because even in a loss, we were commenting on how Red the Swift managed to land almost every single piercing arrow. The guy was really good on that pick, and maybe if there's a slightly better composition around him, maybe if his team just performs that 15-20% better that they need to, he can shine in that role.
Well, speaking of shining in a role, Octavian, this Graves pick for Rec was on point in game number 1. So I'm really excited to see that return, as well as, instead of a Maokai going for a Nautilus, it's the same kind of idea, but I feel like Nautilus really offers you a lot more guaranteed get in there and go with the way that Dredgeline works. So it'll be interesting to see how that does change things up. Maokai was still on the board, so could have gone for that, but just wants a little bit extra there, so goes for the Nautilus instead. And still a lot left up on the board, so neither team really giving away too much just yet. The Rush hovering Warwick. I don't know if you really want to commit that hard.
It will at least provide a little more utility than the Rengar did last game if he does fall behind, but he's going to be going back over to the Rengar. He's saying game 1 was just a fluke. I mean, Rek got undeniably quite a large lead out of the jungle, and Rush never really had all that much impact off of the Rengar, at least not in the first 20-25 minutes or so. But he's still confident in it, and that in itself is something potentially to be admired. We'll have to see how it plays out in game 2 here, but to realize that maybe it wasn't the matchup, maybe it was just a bad game, and not to be thrown by that one bad game is to some degree a skill in and of itself, if Rush is actually going down that track, and if once we get into game he's going to have a better early game and going to have a more successful level 6, which I think is really critical between these two teams.
Yeah, absolutely. You said it in the last game. It's still true this time around. You need to get that Rengar off the ground. Otherwise, it just starts to fall a little bit too far behind. And especially you could see Graves, on the other hand, had a great early game and got way ahead because of it. So got to see maybe a little bit more of a closer competition there. Now, this is what's interesting. So already changing things up a little bit, going for a very heavy poke harass bottom lane in this Ezreal Karma composition here for Chicago.
Yeah, and it's not going to lend itself quite as well to team fighting. Not that Ezreal can't put his hand into the team fighting pot, but he's not quite as good as the Twitch would have been, as well as that being even less of a lane presence than Twitch was. And Kavar actually didn't have a great time in lane. Red the Swift and Brian Man were able to bully him back. So if we do see Red the Swift go back over to this Varus or a similar lane dominant pick, Kavar could actually be in some trouble down here as an Echo gets picked up for the mid lane. It's a blind pick Echo for Finley. It's interesting.
Yeah, so Echo's actually really interesting. This is a pick that we've actually seen guys like Faker actually start to bring back a little bit. Played it once very early on in the season of LCK, and everybody's like, wait, what? Where's that coming from? So one of the things that Echo does give you is a lot of mobility, and that's one of the things that we actually saw Finley do a great job on Lux. And Lux is one of the most immobile champions in the game, and now you get a chance to see it on one of the most mobile champions in Echo. So it'll be really cool to see if that's what can tip the scales in Cincinnati's favor.
And with Swain banned out, we'll see where wee baby Seamus opts to go next. I don't really want to call a specific champion here because while there are some good matchups into Echo for sure, I don't know what Seamus has in mind. Victor would be a little bit more tame than I was anticipating, but certainly not a bad matchup.
Yeah, that's definitely true. The Victor could also go for something like an Orianna there. It's the same kind of idea, but Victor, that's not a champion that we see out there all that much, Octavian. So really interesting to see how that's going to play into this Echo, because this is just not a matchup that we've seen for a while.
Yeah, this is end of last season is what this is reminding me of. Back when Victor was king of the mid lane meta, and you'd occasionally see Echo come out as a counter to some specific mid laners. I don't think Echo has really ever played into Victor, though, as a counter against him, which makes sense given that the Victor was picked into the Echo here. However, we have got about 3 to 3.5 minutes before we can actually get into the game proper. We do have the spectator delay to get through, and in that time there are a few things I'd like to mention. First off, we here at the CSL are hiring at the moment for a social media manager position. If you think you've got what it takes to fill that out, then go ahead on over to cstarleague.com for a bit more information. Was there something you were looking to say there, Rapid?
No, I was just like that was a pretty smooth segue. Gotta hand it to you. I was like, there's some other stuff I want to talk about, and I actually thought to myself, I was like, I wonder what Octavian wants to talk about. And I was like, wait a second.
I want to talk about our sponsors. We've got 3 of them here that I want to mention for you, folks. Band Gaming, which is a social app and the primary social app of the Collegiate Star League. It's got features which allow you to create groups, which are good for your CSL team or club. Wink, wink. Calendar functions, boards, polls, chats, all these sorts of things that you might need for getting your friends together for a game night. As well as that, we are sponsored by Twitch.tv, a service you should be familiar with because you are watching us on it right now and chatting in its chat rooms at the moment as well, I imagine, at least. Asus is our final sponsor here on the list, and we would like to welcome them. A warm welcome to the CSL family for the 2016-17 season, the first time around sponsoring us, and they are purveyors of everything esports. They've got wonderful products such as monitors, laptops, routers, graphics cards, motherboards. I could go on, but I won't because we've got to go to a quick commercial break, and we'll be right back once we get into game. Well, hello and welcome back, everybody. After a brief musical interlude, we are in onto the Rift. My name is Octavian. I am joined by Rapid, the faster caster, and he's going to be casting faster alongside me. I'm not sure who's casting faster than. Are you casting faster than me? Is that what this is, Rapid? Are you?
Well, see, that's the subtle mystery. You know, you got to keep them guessing, Octavian.
Oh, it looks like we might have a pause. The spectator overlay has been a little bit buggy of late. I'm hoping you're seeing this on your end, Rapid. But
okay, so it rewound me back to the very beginning of the game.
Whoa, that's weird. I'm at 31, 32 seconds at the moment. See if you can hop forward to that time stamp.
Okay, I am at 37, 38,
there
39.
We are
all right.
Synced up. That's unusual. Yeah, the spectator client has been a little bit buggy of late. It's been freezing up occasionally when players activate pause, and so it seems like that's the case at the moment. One of the players might have had some sort of internet connectivity issue. That's usually the culprit, but we're not actually aware at the moment.
All right, well, that means that we get to just hang out a little bit. I, of course, am across the world in Seoul, South Korea, but what's it like in your neck of the woods, Octavian?
Hot, flat, and generally not much to do. That's Houston, Texas every day of the week.
Well,
it's
having
nice
been a Texasite myself, this life right now is kind of the exact opposite. It's below zero. There are mountains everywhere, and I've been running and doing errands for the last 5 days, totally nonstop. So things are a little bit opposite, but that's the great thing about esports, Octavian, collegiate esports especially, because it can bring us all from all walks and areas of life from across the globe together to bear witness to what we are about to get a chance to check out, whether it's Echo mid lane or like our previous game. We've got Twitches, Malphites, Luxes, all kinds of shenanigans going on.
Yeah, and I think you brought a little bit of a tear to my eye with that one, Rapid. Acting. I fooled
practicing
you.
my motivational speaking, Octavian.
It worked, though. It worked. It is actually pretty incredible. Not only that we're able to cast from two opposite ends of the globe, but also that you got up at 4 in the morning for this. So I'm always impressed at that level of dedication from my good friend and co-caster, Rapid. But it looks like maybe the pause is resolving. Again, the spectator client is a little bit behind the times on that. But the fact that it's gone from sepia tone to full colorized gives me hope. And there we go. Now we have movement, that final vital piece of the puzzle.
Okay, so just to make sure that we're synced up, 51, 52, 53.
It seems like you're maybe a half second behind me. But we're good.
I'm going to... Okay,
there we go. It jittered for a moment, and I think that might have resolved it. Woo, we did it.
Okay. This is like one of those, I don't know, virtual reality horror movies, where if you die in the game, you die in real life. It's like, if I pause the game, it pauses for you too. Oh my goodness.
That would actually be really useful functionality.
That would actually be super cool.
All jokes aside, it would be really nice for online tournaments if one person could be dedicated as the administrative supervisor or whatever, fancy lingo. Just basically when they hit pause, it pauses for everyone, like I just did now. Magic! Okay, it's back to normal. I'm really just a magician. That's what's going on right now, folks. I'm a magician with more than just my voice.
Oh my goodness, Octavian, multifaceted, back at it again with pausing time and space. How does he do it?
How I don't actually know. How do I do it? Well, here's another one for you, folks. I just can't stop showing off.
Right on cue.
But speaking of cue, that is what Figor started and had tossed one over to Ghibli Studios, and we get to see that paused in full sepia tone beauty right in front of us right now. It's a glorious thing, isn't it? Tank fights. I love them.
Could not agree more, Octavian. What more could you want from a game of League of Legends?
Well, a game of League of Legends.
Well,
yeah, that's something.
I mean, we still have one of those. It's just not,
We have almost 2 minutes worth of one of those, which we've got ample time to contemplate.
Yikes. Okay, well, theoretically, hopefully, we'll be getting this one back up and rolling as soon as possible. We've got our top men on the issue.
We do indeed have top men. We've got multiple men, and all of them are at the top.
It's very horizontally stratified.
It very much is.
Ship that we run over here.
There's not a lot of room for advancement, because as soon as we hire you, it's just you're at the top. Everybody's at the top. Yeah. Everyone is a top man. Don't take my word for that. I'm not involved in any of the administrative duties here.
I was going to say, we should also qualify this by saying that like women, cats, dogs, like some brands of fish, all also up at the top. Yeah, everything just like goes straight to the top.
It's just the way we do things here. We're very
those are all the things that we put on issues like this.
What are we talking about? What are we even saying? Something that we can say though, something relevant, I know, strange, to the game at hand, is that it was mentioned in the middle of last game, you brought it up yourself, that the victor of this, which is looking to be Chicago if the last game is anything to go by, is going to go and face off against Columbia College, who are number 4 in our round of 16 total, and are known as a powerhouse of the ULOL Campus Series. So the gauntlet is by no means over for whichever team makes it out of this best of 3.
Certainly not. But I mean, it is a bracket, and you do have to start whittling down teams as the tournament does go forward. And I think, one of the biggest things, at least for me, is not to see really which teams, float to the top as the cream of the crop, but to see exactly just how they do that. It's kind of difficult if you're trying to pay attention to like stream games that are being played off stream. But as the games do get closer and closer to the finals, we'll be streaming more and more of them, so it'll give you a better idea of exactly how teams are progressing through the bracket. And if you do want to check out the bracket, you can of course do so by heading over to cstarleague.com, of course clicking on League of Legends, and it'll take you to all of our coverage of these ULOL Campus Series playoffs.
Or if you're a particularly lazy guy like myself, you can actually just type !bracketology in our chat, and our handy dandy bot will bring up a link for you where you can go and look at all of our playoff brackets, as well as get a bracket that you yourself can fill out, sort of March Madness style, try and guess the winners and win bragging rights for doing so.
I was just doing it for fun.
This Nautilus heavy breathing is really starting to get to me as well.
I was going to say, this is a little bit creepy. This is like, when you're on the subway and you just start hearing this and you like look behind you and there's this like creepy guy right there and you're like, okay, man.
What's even
rough.
creepier is when you start hearing this and you look behind you and there's no one else on the subway car.
Okay.
That's even worse right there.
So keep in mind, Octavian, it is basically like the middle of the night for me over here. So I don't really need any help not being able to sleep anymore.
The CSL stream has turned into CSL Ghost Stories with Rapid and Octavian.
Well, it's mostly Octavian right now, so this is supposed to be, that child-friendly stream. There's some toddler out there that now won't be able to sleep because of you, Octavian. I hope you're happy.
Yeah, a little bit happy. No, I'm kidding. I would never want to keep a toddler awake. I wouldn't want to do that to their parents. But yeah, I mean, we've kind of run the well dry as far as the brackets are concerned. If you are interested, you can do !bracketology in the chat. Really, though, as Nautilus continues to distract from my voice with the sound of his own passive, I would just like to reiterate one more time how big this is. This game in particular for Chicago, not because really of where it's going to place them in the brackets, even though going into a game against Columbia College, if they do win, is really huge, because that team has such a pedigree in the collegiate scene, but also just because they still have a perfect record. Having been now 1-0 up on this series, they've literally not dropped a game. Not just not dropped a series, they've not dropped a single game in the entirety of the ULOL Campus Series so far, which has not been very short. I mean, they've 2-0'd 5 different series, so that's 10 games, 11 games with game 1 of this series included, that they've not lost in a row. That's decently impressive, even just for somebody playing in solo queue, let alone playing through the bracket of the ULOL Campus Series. But we're back in game, Rapid!
I was going to say, that is actually probably the most impressive part of this game. And, hopefully this is a game that everybody can play on the same level, having to pause it to make sure that all players and champions are able to move about Summoner's Rift accurately. Still having a few little hiccups here and there, but for the most part, we are back and out and underway.
And underway indeed up in the top left of the battle. And I've got an eye particularly towards this bottom lane, though, because that was the point of strength for Cincinnati in Game 1. And Red the Swift is back on Varus. It wasn't stolen away from him like I thought maybe would happen in the draft phase when they prioritized the Malphite pick. And he's also up against a relatively weak laner in the form of Ezreal.
So Octavian, I'm not sure if you're like a little bit further away from your microphone, but for all of a sudden, for some reason, you're a little bit quieter for me. That's all I'm trying to say. Even though your point is actually just as accurate, no matter how loud you are, the rush not, almost dying to his jungle camp, not having it reset, means that, this is a chance for him to show exactly what he has to offer, and actually getting a nice bounce over the wall coming up the top lane.
Yeah, landing the slow, not only from the red buff, but also the Bolas, forces the flash out of Ghibli Studios, who did not want to be rooted up by that second empowered E coming his way. And that's a much better start for Rush than game 1.
I'm pretty sure they could have picked up that kill if the Rush had flashed for the lockdown on the empowered Bola strike. Maybe not wanting to commit for something that was so much of a question mark early, but for Rengar especially, sometimes it can be really worth it because if you are able to pick up that early kill, that it can get your Bone Tooth necklace stacking and start that snowball rolling early.
Still though, claiming a flash off the Nautilus does make the lane a bit easier to return to, and this time they've got the Malphite, so they can get some pretty good gank set up once Figor does hit that level 6. So maybe we'll be seeing a reversal of fortune here going over to Cincinnati. A little bit too early to tell though, only about 4 minutes into the match. And we also have yet to see where Rek decides to go with his early game pressure. Heading up towards the top lane, does walk over a ward in the tri-bush though.
Yeah, so well scouted out. Good notice there. Figor keeping on top of everything. If he was like level 6, then maybe you let Rek come up there and try to turn it around in a 2v1, which is something that Malphite can do. But better safe than sorry, just choosing to go back to base instead.
Tankman again. This is a case of deja vu for this support, as again he gets a little bit too close to a bush, takes a big chunk of damage, and has to burn 2 summoners from the 2 laners. The same exact 2, heal and flash. Way back early
yeah,
in game 1.
I think I've seen this before, so yeah, needing to really shore up things just a little bit. The duo lane was something that was actually kind of a liability for Chicago in game number 1. Coming back here, game number 2, you're really starting to see the same things now. Luckily, in game number 1, Chicago's duo lane was not what won or lost them the game, but this time around, I mean, if you keep letting this Varus, just go off and land every single piercing arrow, eventually that will come back to bite you, and it could be in a big enough way to really turn this game into something that Cincinnati could very feasibly win.
Yeah, especially considering that unlike Twitch, Ezreal is not going to spike as hard in these team fights. He is not going to be able to just get value out of Rat-a-tat-tat flying across 3 or 4 members of the team. He's got to actually have a decent amount of gold to back up those chunking arcane shots. Still though, not too much of a lead one way or another, just a few summoners down for the duo lane, and they're playing back far enough in the lane and safely enough that I'm not going to leave them open to ganks of any sort. They just have to really be on their guard for another Zyra who landed another engage from the duo.
Alright, so where are we at? We're only 6 minutes into the game. It feels like a lot longer, Octavian, because we did have to kill a little bit of time there, but given that it's so early on in the game, we really haven't seen a lot that's really going to change the course of it. We've had a couple of summoners blown, both in the bottom lane and the top lane for Chicago, but here comes a dive.
And it's over as soon as you can say it. Not really much for me to do in that case, as First Blood goes down over to Red the Swift on the Varus. Perfect target for that as well.
Wow. So yeah, that was not a lot of time to react to the play-by-play, just a get in, get out situation. And for the second time in a row, it's the roaming from the mid laner that picks up First Blood.
This is really a serious case of deja vu if we're going back to game number 1. Hopefully the deja vu ends here though, at least for Cincinnati, because they did manage to get a lead in the bottom lane. First Blood from a mid lane roam, and then they went on to start losing some mid game team fights. So hopefully they can avoid that particular part of the formula. But we'll see as we move now into the portion of the game where these teleporting top lanes might start to have a bit more of an impact now they've hit past level 6.
Trying to keep an eye on what's happening on the rest of the map, and sometimes I feel like it can, be overshadowed top lane just because it's tank fights all the time. But now coming in looking for a kill.
Yeah, Ghibli Studios is down. Finley again getting another successful roam, and he's not even really falling that far behind in terms of farm. Only a few CS back, and this time he's the one to get the kill out of the roam as well. Tankman, still without his flash, is likely doomed here. One more auto that'll take. Red the Switch claims another. This is a really, really good start for Cincinnati.
Wow. Well, at least at this point in time, we haven't seen anyone that's really just get completely destroyed and devastated. And really, for Cincinnati, swapping over to this blue side, they're starting to feel some of the feelings of success. Red the Swift off to just as good a start as he had in game number 1. They're going to pick up the first dragon of the game, which they still were able to do in game 1, but this time it's not as crazy strong as just getting that Infernal right off the bat. So we'll see if this really hurts them and keeps them from being able to keep up with Chicago, who were able to really, like you said, turn things around as the game progressed.
And I think critically as well, Rec hasn't been able to find a good opening yet. And in game 1, despite the fact that mid lane roams were successful, bottom lane was going well for Cincinnati, what they were losing out on pretty severely was the jungle almost the entire game. And that's not the case this time around. It's still relatively even between these two junglers. It really hasn't broken one way or another, but that is certainly an improvement over it being a relatively lost cause as it was in game 1.
Wow. So just try to keep an eye on exactly where everything is. Not a lost cause by any means, like you said, but the biggest things to watch out for are going to be repeat ganks. Not necessarily which lane that they come in, but if you can just really smash somebody. And that's kind of what happened in game number 1. AD Carryville was not a place that you really wanted to be. If you're that Twitch going up against this Varus, you kept getting snipe after snipe after snipe. Consequently, on the other side, Rex Graves really lived up to his name. He was just wrecking everything across the map, and especially now that we've got a very strong start here for Red the Swift again, that sends off a lot of big warning bells for me. So we're gonna have to keep an eye on that. And like I said earlier, junglers also things that we're really gonna have to keep an eye on as well, because this is about the rush needing to snowball, something that just really never got off the ground in game 1.
To be fair, Kvar has been able to hold up, at least in terms of CS, still behind by a significant chunk of gold because of those 2 kills over to Red the Swift, but Ezreal will scale decently well. Probably about as well as Varus will, matching that moving into the later game. And it's only a 3-kill lead. It feels devastating this early on because so little action's happening. Pretty much all of it has been in favor of Cincinnati as that trend continues. Rec now caught out in the river. He's going to be going down. The ult actually shoving him back into the fight. Maybe a misclick there as he fired collateral damage off in the wrong direction, but Wee Baby Seamus has roamed up from the mid lane. They can just catch it on one of these low health members. Maybe they can make something happen in return, but it's a flash forward from Brian Man. Bottom lane pulling the flash from Tank Man. The 2 men duking it out.
I was going to say Brian Man and Tank Man. This sounds like a Mega Man game. You know how you have all the villains named after something? We'd have like Sharp Man and like Elec Man pop out of the woodwork any second here, Octavian.
Oh man, I wonder which one is the top man. I guess that's what the game is really about. It would
definitely be Metal Man.
They're trying to determine which of these 2 men, the Tank Man or Brian Man, is in fact the top man. However, this is really such a much better start, such a much better one. That's a phrase that I can use in this English for Cincinnati, because just everything is going well. Every problem they had in game 1 seems to be solved. They are crushing it in bottom lane still. That wasn't really a problem. But now they've got a kill on their Rengar. They've got top lane going evenly, just fine. Early in game 1, Rec did manage to swing top lane a little bit in the early game away. And
watch out for top lane again here, because Ghibli Studios could be in trouble if he doesn't.
Wee Baby's going to use the Blast Cone to get away. However, up in top lane, as you say, Ghibli Studios might be in some trouble. He is slowed down by those nettling plants from Brian Man Zyra. However, your slows will not be enough to keep the Nautilus in place. But it's a swap of the dual lane up to the top side to try and get a shove in onto another outer turret here, as Cincinnati are not only playing the laning phase decently well, but also rotating around the map a little bit. Teleport up to the top side though, as Ezreal flies across Brian Man. There's Change of Corruption onto Rec. Red the Swift is not going to be an easy target, not this time around. And Finley will be dashing over onto Rec and finishing off the kill. This is Cincinnati taking control of yet another fight. Does Figor really want to dive this one? He does indeed. Takes another few turret shots on the way out. It's a double kill to the Echo.
And wow, Red the Swift just barely able to survive there with Summoner Heal. What a god, Octavian. And a 7-0 start here. Cincinnati swapping sides, swapped everything for them. Now off to their biggest lead of the entire series.
this is just such a different game than game one. I wouldn't even have thought that these two teams were the same unless I knew going into it. Just everything is so clean. They don't seem to have any weaknesses. They've got two turrets, a dragon, 8 kills, and over a 5k gold lead at 13 minutes in. It's disgusting, honestly.
I mean, the only thing I can really say right now is that, Kavar is 20 CS up on his lane opponent, which really just evens things up. It doesn't put him that far ahead. The wee baby Seamus is still just holding his own perfectly at the time. Ghibli Studios also is playing just a big tanky engaged champion, so I mean, there's some extent to which he'll be effective no matter what his score looks like. The biggest question mark for me is going to be Rek in the jungle. He looked great on Graves in game one, and even though he's up 20 CS, that CS really doesn't matter. That just means he's cleared Krugs more times than his jungle opponent, because those give you a lot of CS but not a lot of gold. So I don't know, it's really going to be a liability on the junglers for me, and somebody needs to work on shutting down Finley, because he is popping off.
Yeah, Finley is a force to be reckoned with now. He does have that completed proto belt and working on a Lich Bane, I'm assuming. Not the tank echo of yesteryear. And it's shoved down onto the last remaining outer turret.
I'm not just going to agree with you and say, yeah, should be looking for maybe a little bit more aggression here from this Echo instead of going for that big tanky tank like you'd see if it was like a top lane Echo. Red the Swift tanks a few extra turret shots, as it does look like Mountain Drake is the next objective set in Cincinnati's sights.
And where was the straw that broke the camel's back here for Chicago? Because this game was tooth and nail in game one. This series was certainly not this decisive one way or another in the first match, but now just suddenly there's 6k gold behind. They've lost out on every single objective, and they're getting dove over and over again. Wee baby Seamus is going to be bursted down by Rush, leaping in from the backside. Rek going to be point blank ulted. Vigor just shoves his face into two members of the enemy team, and it works out pretty well for him. Ghibli Studios melting, but then again, so is the Varus. A hook on the Brian Man, and these are the first kills back, or first kill singular back for Chicago, as Brian Man does make it out alive. And they still take a turn on the way out, though.
Somehow Brian Man making it out. There's no justice in this world, Octavian. I really thought that there was a turnaround opportunity there for Chicago, as that was a really big overdive between the turrets when the outer mid lane turret was still not taken down just yet. Now, I mean, it did fall immediately after the fight started, but there was a possibility that maybe you just know a little bit better how to play that dive or the counter dive, and Chicago was able to turn that around. Now, obviously, that's not what happened, and really to add insult to injury right now, 10 stacks on Majai's Soul Stealer for Finley.
Yeah, and usually I find Majai's rather a questionable choice, but this game, it makes sense. Finley is doing so very much work, and if they can just keep that snowball rolling, then there's not going to be a way back into this one for Chicago. They've got a pretty decent team fighting composition, that's for sure, but Ezreal still needs some time to scale up, only just now finishing a man immune, matched up against all of the lethality that works so well in the mid game that Varus is going to bring to the table. And Rek is almost a non-factor now, so he's having to flash out of his own jungle.
Well, he's having to flash away from the support champion on the other team. So, I mean, that should really tell you what's going on right here when your aggressive jungler who's wanting to build all this lethality is having to be this afraid for his life. Now, top lane, even Finley, getting in on a Ghibli Studios, doesn't really even care. He will ult defensively just to escape, but, I mean, just really nothing standing in the majority of Cincinnati's way.
Yeah, Kavar gonna soak up a little bit of farm down here. Malphite pretty much the only one that he can stand up to, as Ghibli Studios is getting melted topside. There's the Mastery flashing on the way out. And a lot of resources burned trying to catch in onto this potentially overextending mid-jungle duo, but there's just so much more damage on the side of Cincinnati now. Overextension is a difficult thing for them to do. Tankman caught out flashing the long way over the wall, but a long-range Zyra plant auto will claim it. Oh, no, Vigor doesn't land the ulti. He's flashing after Kavar. Just one more auto will do it. Claiming it under the turret with the help of the Mastery there. On the way out, though, he does go down. Maybe an overextension if the ult doesn't hit.
I mean, definitely, but at some point you just have to prove your point and say, look, I know I can do this. I am capable. I'm going to hold it down. And able to just really prove a point. They're going back in.
Maybe a little bit unwise, but the turret does fall. Finley will trade his life for it, though. A little bit more sloppy play than we've seen for the rest of the game from Cincinnati, but they're still taking things off the back of it. They get that top lane inhibitor turret at 18 minutes. Like, I say sloppy play, but then they take an inhibitor turret at 18 minutes. So really, how justified can that statement be?
So there's two schools of thought here. If I can use an analogy, if I have, two, red pieces of candy and a blue piece of candy in my hand, and I put them behind my back and say, if you guess which piece of candy, which color it is, you can keep it. If you guess blue, maybe you get it sometimes, but it's never the smart decision. So at sometimes, maybe you win, but it matters like, how you win. Like, do you win because you did what you knew was not the best idea, or do you win because like you were smart, you're intelligent, you know how to close things out? Sometimes it's one, sometimes the other, maybe both. Maybe both lead to victory, but sometimes it does matter how you get there. So when it comes to this game, I feel like some of it has maybe been just a little bit lucky with Cincinnati not getting punished for a lot of their risky plays. But I mean, when everything works out, sometimes you just got to go with it. And they certainly have been rolling with every opportunity they've been given.
All about how much candy you can get in the end, really.
That is what life has taught me.
This secondary turret here in the mid lane, though, is already gravely wounded. I don't think Graves is going to be enough to hold it off. Ghibli Studios caught turning the corner. He's aggressively asked why they haven't put out another movie recently. He's simply going to walk away from the fans.
Yeah, nope. Okay, so there are a couple of things to be said at this point. Now, going into a poke composition, sieging against them, things like Kavar, like Takeman, are going to be a little bit difficult because you're going to take a lot of poke. Now, on the bottom side of the map, though, a little bit of rough spot for Ghibli Studios is not only have they not released a movie lately, but they're being beset by Finley's Echo.
And 2 more secondary turrets fall. Those are all the turrets outside of the base, and one of them even in it, as that top lane inhibitor turret did fall a little while ago. Baron is pretty much the last hope for Chicago at this point. It's the only objective powerful enough that if Cincinnati do decide to go for it, they could be a little weaker around that fight, but they honestly don't even have to decide to go for it at any point. They can bait it for sure. They've got the control of the map to do that, but they never really need to start it.
Yeah, they could certainly bait it. One thing that should be noted is that with one of the most recent kills, Finley did lose almost all of his stacks of Medjai's Soul Sealer. So that is a really, really quality kill to pick up there on a very difficult to kill champion. So resetting those stacks are going to make Finley not nearly as strong as he was before. So you got to give some credit where credit is due, and allow him the opportunity to maybe power back up or to punish him for giving up that that power spike that he had.
However, the much safer objective of Cloud Drake will be taken down in quick time, and Chicago are left contemplating their first loss, really, if things continue to go to form this game, of the entire season. So this is a pretty big deal for Cincinnati if they can take down this Titan.
All right, well, I mean, Kavar just trying desperately to use his ult to clear out the waves. And I think you actually pointed out earlier, Octavian, that once you get to this big of an advantage, it's like, well, what went wrong? I think was how you put it. So,
whoa,
wow, okay.
Brandman's gone, but it is a 1-for-1 trade. Admittedly, a 1-for-1 trade is something that Chicago, in these sorts of dire straits, might be happy to take, especially since even just that lack of a member on the bottom side means that Echo's going to be backing away a bit. But Figor going in with the ulti onto Rek and Tankman is overextending himself as well, and there's a flash forward on the Red the Swift. Ghibli Studios finds a catch, and the game pauses. Oh, no. I was play-by-play casting. I had a rhythm going. It was good. I enjoyed the rhythm. I hope other people did too. But hey, we're back out of the rough little pause there. Don't worry, the players didn't actually pause, just our viewing of them. And in the end, nobody actually continues to go down as the game does hop into a pause here, as we might have anticipated from that little stuttering bug. And Echo will claim the inhibitor top lane, critically.
I'm just trying to keep an eye on the game and like make sure that we're all in the right place right now. It does appear as if it is paused for everybody and it's paused at the same place. So what can we really tell based on the situation at hand? First thing, wee baby Seamus, while dead, is actually doing fairly well. Now he's a little bit behind in CS at the time being, but at least he's still able to do things like clear away minion waves and still has the burst damage to really be a threat to guys like Red the Swift, Brian Mann, the Rush. Can blow them all up right now. And he's working on that Lich Bane. As soon as that gets completed, there's real potential for him to maybe snipe off a couple of kills and make it really annoying to clear this game. But I think the thing that tells, or the statistic or the graph really that tells the biggest story is if you do push, I forget what it is, it's the time control. So I think that is, I forget what the hotkey is.
For everybody. There we go. Time controls are up.
Yeah, you can just see there's nothing but blue objectives having been taken. It's dragon, turret, dragon, turret, dragon, turret, or inhibitor. It's just there's nothing that's been taken all game long as far as objectives for Chicago. So they just got to get on the board somewhere.
Well, the client seems to have recovered from its little spat earlier, and we are back onto the Rift, though. I imagine Chicago is not feeling so happy about that. At least during that pause, they weren't 10k gold back and losing more and more as the game goes on. But Baron is a very real object of contention now between these two teams, even though we are still quite early days yet as far as the clock is concerned. As far as gold is concerned, we've got players breaking 10k total on the side of Cincinnati. Specifically the Echo, who's at 10.3k gold, which is just ridiculous. Echo alone has a third the total gold of the enemy team.
Wow. Well, when you put it that way, it looks bad, Octavian. What a statistic. Gotta say, really impressed by Finley's Echo. Echo not a champion you see traditionally in the mid lanes, so kind of good on you there for him picking a champion that maybe you wouldn't traditionally see. Also, another mark of maturity is selling his Soul Stealer. Yeah, there we go. I was like, wait, the book thing. Yeah, selling his Medjais and making sure that he is still going to be a value to his team without trying to just go for these crazy plays and stack up that item.
A little hunt burn, but I don't think that Rush really has a great target to leap onto here. However, he seems to think differently. There's a leap in onto the Ezreal, but they're going to be just pulled back inside of that gravity well, and you cannot underestimate the CC coming out of Chicago's composition. Finley does manage to sneak one out for his side in there, but it's a triple kill going over to the Graves. Nicely done. They still lose an inhibitor turret on back of it, though. Oh, it's so rough. Even the good team fights are, to some degree, failures for Chicago now.
There's just no hope, no optimism here. And I mean, slow and steady might be what wins the race for a lot of teams, and you can see why that is. Gotta say, these are the kind of ways that you give away games. And even though Echo is still trying to be annoying and just like play it as anti-safely as possible, he's going to get locked down here, and we'll see if he pays for it.
Finley could be going down. He doesn't have the ulti available, and Rek is unstoppable.
Okay. Well, I mean, I guess that's a thing. That is a thing that has happened. That's actually a little bit insane. To think about Rek really, he was 0-2 until maybe like 10 minutes in. Now all of a sudden he has a positive score, and he's the only member of his team to have a positive score at 5-4. And while the scoreline might look pretty bad, I mean, this is definitely still anybody's game.
It is,
even though it seems ridiculous to say that.
Yeah, it's the start of a way back into the game. You know, you certainly don't start coming back into a game by not getting kills, and by not doing slightly better than before. They, by no means, have this game back under control. But maybe, just maybe, there's a hope now. Especially...
Oh, no.
Oh, no. Karma cut out top side. Rengar ulti going to be leaping in onto Tank Man, who then gets snared up by an empowered Bolas. This is a dead support. Good night.
Oh my goodness! Got to give some, maybe honorable mention, or that's where you get the participation trophy, because he did at least try to escape and do a decently good job. But oh man, the Red the Swift rather, knowing that it was definitely better safe than sorry there to get away from Wreck.
Fun little jump from Rush. Gets the back to the pit to that ward, and this is the Baron started off. They can tank this one up pretty well, be it with Zyra plants or just their Malphite. And so it's a decently safe Baron to take. Wreck is on the other side of the wall, though. We'll see if he can steal this one out. Leaping in, he does not manage to get the steal. It is secured. However, he does manage to at least bring down the Malphite for his troubles. We'll see how significant that is in the team fight that is likely to come.
I mean, I guess trading 1-for-1 is not the worst trade at this point, but going back in, you can really tell that Finley wants to try to make something happen. He does secure the red buff for his team, but won't be able to get a whole lot else. And for the time being, the game does go on, but now with Baron buffed up minions and super minions pushing in to this Chicago base, might be even more difficult for them to hang on for now.
And this game, if nothing else, exemplifies the fact that these two teams were at the top of their game coming into the Ro16 here. They came in 5-0 and 4-1, respectively. And game one perhaps didn't exemplify that very well, but this year we're seeing that Cincinnati certainly has the power to fight back. Finley, in particular, has been such a carrying force for his team this game. And now with 2 inhibs down, the third one wide open, I can't see a way that Cincinnati don't manage to eventually pull this one out, especially when they're doing that sort of damage to the backline. Victor down almost instantly. Kavar going to be short to follow, I imagine, as the Rengar continues to chase after him. However, it is about an even trade, but Finley is just destroying their base at the moment. They have nothing to answer this Echo anymore. Maybe Wreck can do it. He's coming back over, but my god! His health just evaporates under the force of that ulti. Red the Swift will finish off the support. Rush is now coming in from the side. A little mini base race to end the game, or just a race in onto Chicago's base. And Red the Swift will close it out.
Wow, and what a game. The scoreline at the end is a little bit more, or isn't indicative of what it was for most of the game. Just domination from Cincinnati, really just showing what it takes to come back against a team that just kind of bopped you. They doubled, Chicago doubled Cincinnati in kills in game number 1, and just overall no hope there. Very similar game number 2, but it was Cincinnati who came out and just really showed that they were not willing to give up without a fight. And that, Octavian, will take us to a deciding game number 3, which will be coming your way after a short commercial break. So don't go anywhere, guys. Stick around, and we'll have that deciding game 3 coming up next.
Only $14.99.
Don't miss the call. Download Band. Communication made easy.